So, Mr. Volker, having in mind the current constellation of relations and challenges on the international scene, how significant is the region of Western Balkans for the USA and also for NATO?
Well, thank you very much. It's great to be back in Montenegro. Right now, as you know, we're in the midst of our own presidential election campaign in the U.S., and no one has the opportunity to think about anything else. It's just consuming all attention. But when you look at U.S. strategic interests in Europe and more broadly in the world, we're facing greater and greater risks. We have the biggest war in Europe since World War II with Russia's war on Ukraine. We have a raging war in the Middle East. We run great risks in Asia, and these threats are gradually merging together. And what I think Americans need to realize is that there are risks in the Balkans as well. The countries of the region are not all fully integrated into the European Union, not all fully members of NATO, and are subject to a lot of activism on the part of actors who have a nationalist or religious or ethnic agenda, and that is also manipulated by outside actors like Russia. So it is a volatile region still, and it's important that we stay focused on restoring peace and security in Europe as a whole, and that the Balkans needs to be included in that.
And what do you see as the main challenges and threats to the security in the region of Western Balkans?
Well, I think it's twofold, and as we said, I think first it's domestic actors in the Balkans countries themselves who fan nationalist or religious or ethnic flames and histories because it can benefit them politically, but it is incredibly risky and potentially destructive. So it is these politicians themselves that are the first thing. And then secondly, those are exploited by external actors. And I mentioned Russia, also the Russian Orthodox Church, others that are coming from outside to fan the flames of this grievance mentality, which I think can be very dangerous.
USA was always an important actor in Western Balkans. So now, in addition to Ukraine, we also have the situation in the Middle East, where USA is also quite involved. May those crises distract the USA's focus from Western Balkans?
Without question, it's already happening. You see the U.S. very much focused on Russia's war in Ukraine and the war in the Middle East. And of course it distracts, especially at high levels, from attention on the Balkans region. That is why it is so important for leaders in the Balkans to do the work necessary to align themselves with the European Union, get into the European Union as quickly as possible, because you can't afford to be adrift, because bad things can still happen.
So is Russia or may Russia use this situation to maybe extend its influence in Western Balkans and especially in Montenegro, since we know that their influence is pretty present in our country?
Yeah, there's no question that Russia is trying to do that. They have a hot war going on in Ukraine. They have a more frozen conflict in Georgia and in Transnistria in Moldova. And they are actively trying to undermine pro-Western governments and political parties and actors in the Balkans. Even just look right now, you have elections coming up in Bulgaria, and Russia is playing a very active role supporting one of the political parties and trying to flip that government away from a pro-Western orientation. We've seen the same thing in Montenegro, including using channels from Serbia or through Serbia to exert influence in Montenegro. It is very dangerous, and I think even having parties in the Montenegro government that question Montenegro's Western orientation and independence, this itself is very dangerous and is something that is supported from outside by Russia.
And also in Montenegro, identity and nationalist narratives are being raised again, not only in Montenegro but also in other countries. How do you comment on that? And do you think that the stabilization in the region is possible at the moment?
Well, so Montenegro, I think, can be proud of the fact that it has been a model of multinational or multi-ethnic integration. What other country in the Balkans has a predominantly Slav population and an ethnic Albanian prime minister at some point? So it's been a model of integration and tolerance and a Western focus. It can't afford to lose that. I think if it drifts into deeper and deeper nationalism and grievances and resentments, as has begun to happen, that is a recipe for disaster for Montenegro.
Where is and how do you see it? Where is and where should be a small country like Montenegro, which is a member of NATO, but also aspirant for the EU membership, while these events are going on the international but also regional stage?
Well, obviously Montenegro is a very small country. It can't provide for its own security in the world the way that a larger country could. It also is dependent economically on its interactions with other countries. So clearly Montenegro needs to be a member of NATO, needs to be a member of the European Union, and needs its neighbors to be part of the European Union and part of NATO as well. That is what's going to be best for the country of Montenegro. And I would just say that I think everything has been going too slowly on the part of actors in the Balkans themselves to do what's necessary to bring their countries forward. And also, the West has been too slow. I think there's now a bit more openness in the West, but still it needs to be more proactive in the region as well.
Montenegro has predicted an increase in the defense budget for this year, planned for modernization of the military. Among the countries of the region, especially Serbia and Croatia, they also have certain investments in the military. How do you comment on that?
Well, I think this is necessary, and I look at this more through a NATO lens, with Montenegro as a member of NATO. It's important for all countries that are in NATO to spend at least 2% of GDP on defense and to be integrating within NATO as much as possible so that we form a truly common security arrangement. If you have any countries in NATO that are not pulling their share, not spending enough on defense, that will weaken political support for NATO and other countries, especially the United States.
You've mentioned before the elections in the USA. In what way could those elections affect the attitude of the USA towards the Western Balkans?
I'm not sure that it's going to have a big change one way or the other. It matters to the United States. It is not top of the list in the United States, and I think that will be true whether it's a Harris or a Trump administration.
And one question that I just must ask, is the end of the war in Ukraine in sight? What solutions do you predict that may happen?
Well, the key to the war against Ukraine ending is for Putin to decide that it's too costly to continue. The only reason there's a war is because Putin has created it. The only way the war stops is if Putin ends it. Right now, he still believes he can gain by fighting. He's willing to kill as many Russians as it takes in order to keep advancing. So he's losing over 1,000 soldiers a day, and he believes it's worthwhile. Therefore, in order to convince him of something else, it's going to require the United States and our allies in Europe to put enough military force and unrestricted use of that military force on the table so that Ukraine can show that it is very costly for Russia and not worth it for Putin to continue. We haven't done this well enough yet. We should have done it a long time ago. We still need to do it. And I would say whether it's a Harris or a Trump administration, that's the challenge, is to get enough support to Ukraine that Putin decides he has to stop the war.
So you think that he will stop the war, and do you maybe expect that he may extend this war to other neighboring countries of the Ukraine?
I think they're both possible at this point. I think that we can put enough military force on the table to get him to stop. I also think if we don't, and he actually succeeds in defeating Ukraine, which I don't predict, but it's possible, if he did that, I think he would have designs on every other country that had formerly been part of the Russian Empire.